chose to watch this video, that you've chosen to be a life group leader here at Westgate. Life groups are so important to our church and what we're trying to do. I just want to talk to you about being a life group leader and your vision. So this video, we're going to cast a vision for our life groups. We're going to talk about some practical things to consider as you're contemplating being a life group leader and you're getting this kicked off. I hope this video will be something you can go back to as a resource to later on when you're thinking of things as you learn as you go. A lot of times with a life group, you learn as you go, and there's questions that come up, and you really don't know until you get into your life group meetings some of the big questions you're going to have. So feel free to go back and watch this video at any time. Feel free to contact the office if you have questions. I'll be glad to help you in any way that I can to help facilitate your group and make it a successful group. But you need a vision. Every great organization has a vision for what they want to do. In my former life, I was a coach, and in coaching, a lot of times you want your teams to have a vision for what they want to accomplish. A lot of teams are beat before they ever step on the playing field because they don't have a clear vision of who they are and what they want to accomplish. We want to have a vision for our life groups. I want you to have a vision for your life group. Do you see God working powerfully in your life group? So important. Do you see this as part of God's plan? Part of God's mission, how it's going to bless others and bless the members of your group. So why do we have life groups? That's a really good question. Why do we have life groups at Westgate? Well, as our culture becomes more and more connected, I mean, our connectivity is crazy. We have all kinds of ways to communicate, to text message, to FaceTime people. I mean, you name it, tons of ways to communicate with people. We become more and more isolated in our world. And so life groups are a way to connect people, to build relationships. You're going to hear me talk about two things specifically when it comes to life groups. Two goals for our life groups. Number one, relationships. We want to build meaningful, lasting relationships, spiritual friendships in our life groups. We also want application. We want application of what we're learning in Scripture in our life groups. Now, I'm going to give you an acrostic to help you see what our life groups are all about. There are five specific things that we want for our life groups. And it's going to be the word share is going to be our acrostic. And the S is about serving others. We want our life groups to be groups of service. I can't tell you how many times I've heard of life groups helping one another. Many times, life group members know when someone is going through something horrible, and the shepherds and elders hear about it later, and even the staff hears about it later, but the life group knew first. And the life group is there to aid that person, whether they're in the hospital, they're cooking meals for that person, they're there for the birth of a child. So life groups become a place where you can serve one another and even serve the community, do service projects. Some of our life groups have taken part in service projects all over the city of Dothan. So number one, we want to serve one another and also serve the community at large. We also want to be a place of healing. We want our life groups to be a place where you can share with one another and be healed. A place that's safe, that if you need to confess something in your heart, that you feel comfortable confessing that this is a place you can be healed because of that confession. And also application of God's Word. That's the A. Application of God's Word. We want to take what we're learning in our lessons and apply it to our lives. And then relationships. That's the big R. We want to build meaningful, deep spiritual relationships. And the E of share is about evangelism. We want to be evangelistic with our life groups. We want to grow our life groups and multiply our life groups. We want our life groups to get so big that at some point they need to multiply, that you get up to 20 or more people and you need to multiply those groups into multiple groups. The reason evangelism is so important in life groups that many times people that we come in contact with, could be friends or neighbors or people that we work with, that we come in contact with every day, they're intimidated by church. They're intimidated by a large gathering of people, but they're not intimidated by coming and just sharing time at a friend's house. And so these life groups are a great place for them to come because in a life group, they're going to meet regular people. They're going to meet people that are struggling with sin and problem and issues and pain in their life. The difference in this life group, though, is they have the answer. They know Jesus Christ. They know the gospel, and they also have community. And so these people that aren't Christians see that and go, man, I want that. I want those answers. I want Jesus in my life. I want this community. So we want our life groups to be evangelistic. So the word share. Think about Acts 2 and that church that you read about in Acts where they're sharing all their life together. They're in fellowship constantly, learning from the apostles and sharing life together. That's the vision we're wanting to get with our life groups. So as we get to the nuts and bolts of life groups, you ask the question, well, who can be a life group leader? That's intimidating. What does a successful life group leader look like? And I'll give you 2 prerequisites to be a life group leader. Number 1, love Jesus. Number 2, love people. If you love Jesus and you love people, you can be a successful life group leader. Many times, preachers and Bible class teachers and Bible scholars are the worst life group leaders. They get in the way of the life group. Preachers, guys like me, want to hear themselves talk. I mean, you're listening to me talk right now. And we get in the way of facilitating good discussion in our life group. So great life group leaders are facilitators. They're the ones like John the Baptist that say, he must increase, I must decrease. They want to focus the attention on the group and what they have to say. So good life group leaders are people that love the Lord and love people. Now here's some things you need to do as a life group leader. I'm going to get into some practical things to help you as a leader. Number 1, you need to pray. Pray for every meeting. Pray over the meeting. Pray over the meeting place. Pray for each individual member in your life group. Set goals for your group. What do you want to accomplish with your group? Know where you're going with your group. Contact people not in a life group. In the office, we have a large list of people that aren't in life groups. We know we can help you that up. Some of you have already asked for that list of people that aren't in life groups. When people place membership at Westgate, approach those people and invite them to your life group. When people are baptized, approach those people and invite them to your life group. So be proactive in inviting people to your group. And also encourage your members to invite others. Encourage the members of your life group to invite other people to your life group. So let's talk about the meeting. What does the life group meeting need to look like? Well, I would say it needs to be about 45 minutes to an hour as far as the study is concerned. Now, you can fellowship and eat and spend more time together if you like, but as far as the study component, it needs to be around 45 minutes to an hour. If you go too long with that, if you have undefined times, and there's no structure to your meeting, people probably won't come back. I'm the world's worst at that. My life group was the kind that, I would let discussion go so long and eventually I'd go, oh, we need to start our study, and it would be late into the night. And I know it drove some of the parents in our life group crazy. So have a set time. When are you going to begin your study? And stay on target with your times. Now, as we think about application for our groups, let me just say what we want to do with the groups here at Westgate from now on is we want our life groups to track with what we're studying on Sunday morning. Now that'll either be a sermon discussion guide, or sometimes we'll throw some videos your way, or some curriculum things that are going to match up with what we're studying on Sunday morning. You're going to notice something different about our life group discussion guides going forward. This is a really important thing that you need to pay attention to, because this is going to change the shape of your groups. Our life group discussion guides are going to begin with questions that I call openers. Easy questions that anyone will feel confident about answering. Simple, icebreaker type questions. Then the second set of questions are called delve questions. We're going to delve deep into the passage. We're going to look at what the Bible is teaching about whatever we talked about that morning in the assembly. And then the last set of questions, which is very important, is application. Remember I told you we were wanting relationships and application? These application questions are a big deal. We want you to get to the application questions. So that's why it's important to structure your meeting time. If you're like me and you get kind of off track, like I tend to do sometimes, you'll get to the opening questions, you may get to the delve questions, you never get to the application questions. You need to structure your meeting time where you get to those application questions, because that's where the heart and the meat of it is for our life groups. So let's say if you got a 45-minute meeting, you're going to say, okay, we're going to meet for 45 minutes and have our discussion. Well, I would divide it this way, maybe 5 minutes for opening, 5 minutes for icebreakers, then maybe 20 minutes for delve questions and 20 minutes for application. Or if you're doing a 1-hour meeting, I may say, well, okay, I'm going to do 5 minutes for icebreaker opening, I'm going to do 20 minutes for delve, and I'm going to do 35 minutes on application. We want to spend a good bit of time in application. That's really important. I can't emphasize that enough. Now, when asking questions, you need to think about questions this way. You're working into your questions, and you're starting with easy to answer questions where people are comfortable. If you start your life group out with heavy hitter questions, people a lot of times will not talk. They're not going to answer a heavy hitter, challenging question early into a group meeting. But as they get more and more comfortable in the meeting setting, they'll start to open up and answer those heavy-hitting questions. So your questions need to follow that kind of format to where you start with a simple, and if you follow the discussion guide, that's going to be easy. It's going to be structured that way already for you. Let's talk about handling discussion. You're having your meeting and you're starting to open up and have questions. How do you handle it? Here's one thing you need to remember. Always be positive. Even when people say things that may be kind of crazy, just to be honest. Maybe it has nothing to do, their answer has nothing to do with the question. Think of a way you could respond to those people where you can affirm their answer instead of turn them off. And you could say something like, well, thank you for sharing. I appreciate you speaking up. Or you could redirect it to the group and say, have any of you guys ever experienced something like that? Or maybe you could take that question and rehab it a little bit and rephrase it for them. Or maybe organize their thoughts if they're struggling. So a good facilitator is thinking ahead. As people answer questions, you're going to be very careful not to hurt them or offend them. And if they're going to open up and be vulnerable and answer questions, we want to affirm that. So we've got to be careful not to be ugly to people, even when they answer things that maybe just are not really what you're looking for. So be careful how you handle that. Now, what about those people that dominate your meeting? Well, we all have them in our groups, or we've had them. They dominate the discussion, and other people that are more shy never get a chance to talk because one person is basically teaching the life group. So here's some tips that you learn over time dealing with people like that. You have someone that's dominating the conversation and you're the leader, just break eye contact with that person. Stop looking at them. A lot of times that's a social cue to that person to stop talking. Here's another thing that we all know to do. When they take a breath, which they finally hopefully will do, break in and be ready. Redirect. Say, does anyone else have input on what we're talking about? Can y'all relate to what that person so-and-so was saying in particular? So redirect it quickly to the group. And if it's so bad that the social cues don't work, just have a nice conversation with that person. It could go something like this. Hey man, I'm new at this and it just seems like we're the only two people talking and I'm bad about that. I've got to work on that. Can you help me with that? How about next meeting, the both of us, let's try to be minimal in our talking. Let's let some of the other people talk. I just feel like maybe we're a little bit more mature and we're dominating this conversation. There's ways you can handle a person like that without offending them too. So we want to be positive, but we also want to be very organized in our meeting and not let one person dominate. Now, here's why it's so important that our meetings have application. They're tracked with what we're doing here at church with our studies. So many churches make a lot of mistakes, and here's one mistake churches make. They throw too much material at people. Let me give you an example. This is a bad example. Let's just say in the Sunday morning class, the church is studying the Gospel of Matthew. Then in the sermons, they're studying the book of Exodus. Then in life groups, they're studying finances and money. And then on Wednesday, they're studying the book of Exodus. I mean, thinking, okay, we're just going to throw a lot of mud up on the wall, and how much of that is going to stick? It's just too much stuff for the average person to process. And such a short period of time, an hour of class, a 30-minute sermon, and an hour of life group, and an hour Wednesday night class, it's hard to get any application from just too much stuff. So we're trying to streamline it. So let's just think, okay, for example, what if on Sunday morning we're studying being a servant of the Lord, and that's our Sunday morning class. A sign of discipleship is being a servant of Christ. Then the sermon is about Philippians 2 and the mind of Christ, how he humbled himself and became a servant. Then at life group, our discussion was about how do we become servants of Christ? How does that look practically in our life? That's a lot simpler to see. Think about it. Which one of those examples would be more effective? The one we're just throwing truckloads of info at people, or the one we're having the same conversation all the way through? Not boring people, but getting to that point of application. What does this mean to you in your life practically? How does this play out? We talked about this theology in class. We talked about this in the sermon. Okay, now at life group, how does that look in your life every day? And that's why it's important that our life groups follow the discussion guides or videos that we've sent out as a ministry staff to try to reinforce what we're doing. So I hope you'll be on board with that as a life group leader. So let's think about meetings in particular. We've talked a little bit. Let's talk some more about our meetings. Well, have the room set up when people show up. That sends the right signal when the room is set up ready to go, and welcome people when they walk in. Make them feel like, hey, this person's glad I'm here. So be welcoming, have the room set up, maybe have your life group guide set out already, the video queued up you're watching, whatever you're doing that day, have it ready when people show up. In our first meetings, I think this is important in the next few weeks, go over expectations with the members. Tell them what we're trying to do with relationships and application and why it's so important. You can share with them the SHARE method if you'd like to, and tell them what we're trying to accomplish with our groups. Talk to them about confidentiality. What is said in the group stays in the group. We don't need that to become fodder for gossip. So if someone opens themselves up and they share some things with a group that they feel funny about or maybe embarrassed, that doesn't need to make its way outside that group. It needs to be confidential. It needs to be a safe place. And then confession. We only need to confess our sins. I was in a group, not making this up. A guy stood up and confessed the sins of his wife. And I'm like, that's just really not what we're looking for. We shouldn't confess the sins of others. If we're going to confess, we need to confess our own sins. We need to be careful not to allow our life groups to become a place for gossip to flourish. For people to talk bad about other churches or other fellowships or bash other groups, it's not what it's all about. It's not the purpose of our life groups. So personal application too. We want personal application. We're not doing life groups so you can say, well, this group over here needs to apply this principle. Those folks there need this. No, this is personal. It's about I. So we want our life groups to focus on personal application, not someone out there. And accessibility. I want you to ask your life group members to be accessible to one another. I'm not saying they have to be on call 24/7, but accessible to the other group members if they have trouble and need some help, in a sense of accountability there too. And we want to grow. We want to grow. When you get to that certain number of 20 or more and it just gets too cumbersome for a group, we would love to see that multiply. So think about that. I would love to have double the groups by this time next year. When we do life group kickoff again the next time, I would love to have twice the number of groups we have now, because these groups multiplied, recruited people in and multiplied into 2 or 3 groups. That's really what we want to see. So convey that to your members. That's a goal. We want to multiply. Buddy Bell told me this. A really cool practice they do is they, in their life groups, put an empty chair out in the middle of the room. And they pray that God will send someone to fill that chair the next week. I think that's a beautiful practice. God, send us someone new next week. What's a member here at Westgate that's not plugged in that we can get plugged in with a life group? Another thing to think about in your life groups is childcare. How will you handle childcare? And just a quick reminder, for 6th grade and up, we have rising activities and we have the youth group activities. So we're thinking about those kids 5th grade and younger. What will we do with those kids? Number one, we want to make those kids feel welcome. I think in my life group last year, the children loved it so much. They looked forward to life group, and we would have little ones cry when they had to go home. So we want those young ones to love life group too. There's not just one way to handle childcare with your life group. There's a lot of wise ways to go about it. Here's some examples of what some life groups have done. Some life groups designate one family per week to watch the children. Maybe you could have a mini lesson for the kids. It doesn't have to be elaborate. You could look at what they're doing in the children's ministry with the gospel project that weekend. Maybe have a devotional plan for the kids for just a few minutes and let them play in another room. So you have one family designated per week. I would give this caution not to use the same family every week, because you'll burn out with it and people will not want to come to life group anymore. Another way that people have gone about this is families come together and hire a babysitter. Hire maybe a youth group member or someone that they know. And that person comes to the home where the life group meets and actually watches the kids there on site. And they come together and pay that person to do it. Or like we've done in my life group before, if we have a child that's not old enough to be in the youth group activities, maybe they're in 5th grade or 4th grade and they're mature, that child can watch the little ones and kind of watch after them. And a mom or dad can take a break every so often from a life group and walk back and just check and make sure things are okay. So there's all kinds of ways you can handle childcare with your life group, but I want you to think ahead. In these early meetings, talk about that. You may already have a strategy, and that's wonderful, but just realize that's something you want to handle up front. You want to make those children feel welcome at your life group. Also, as we think about life group, thinking ahead, meals become a big deal. You don't want meals to become an albatross around the neck of your members. You want to have a strategy. Now, you may want to have every so often that one family provide a meal, or you come together and do some type of potluck, a dinner of some kind, maybe finger foods. I know our life group, they've done stuffed baked potatoes, or some type of a Brunswick stew, or something that's easy to make in mass quantities, or just order pizza. One simple way, if you don't want to have to deal with meals, is you could do a brown bag dinner, where each family brings their own meal, and maybe the host family provides desserts or drinks. That's one strategy that you could use for meals. So don't let meals become a problem, a deterrent to your life group. You want to think, okay, I don't want to put any impediments to people wanting to come to life group where they're just dreading having to cook a meal or prepare something. So I want to make that simple. Maybe someone volunteers, they have something they like to do in mass quantities, or possibly just brown bag dinner to make it simple. But that's really just up to you. But have that conversation with your life group members in particular. As you think of meeting place, this is an important question to ask. Where will the life group meet? Typically, research has shown life groups do better when they meet in a home. I get that sometimes it's not possible, that you may need to meet here at the building, and I totally understand that. My life group in the past has done both. We've met here at the building and in homes. But try to designate a house and set up a schedule to help those families prepare for life groups coming to their home. The more houses you can use, the better in your life group, because you're going to burn people out. I can speak from experience. A lot of times it's tiring when you've had a lot going on a Sunday afternoon, life groups coming over that evening, and you got to frantically clean the house. I always told my wife, well, one positive we have about life group meeting in our home is our house is clean when the week starts. But that can become a burden for people if they host every week. So have a plan. Who's going to host life group? And if you have to, meet here at the building. I'd rather you meet than not meet. So find some strategy where we don't wear out the same family, that we meet in their house every week. So in closing, I want to thank you for watching this video. I know you've got a lot of things you could be doing with your time. We really want our life groups to be a success this year. We want to do things better going forward with life groups. And there are two goals to our life groups this year. And here they are. It's really simple. We want to build meaningful relationships. Studies have shown when new people come into a church, they need to build relationships within 6 months or they're gone. They're not going to stay. So meaningful relationships, people plugging in to the life of the church, and that can happen through your life group. And also application of the lesson. I mentioned earlier, we can throw so much information at people in classes, but if they don't really dig deep and apply what they're learning, it's almost a waste of time. It's not like we want to take information, just throw it up on the wall and hope something sticks. We want what we're teaching in our classes, what we're teaching from the pulpit, to be applied. So our life groups are going to be a vehicle for that. That when you're going through your Q&A in your life group, it's so important to get those application questions on your life group discussion guide and have a meaningful discussion about how do you apply these things to your everyday life. Let me just say this too in closing. The number one indicator of a successful life group leader, this is what people say across the board, is do you pray? Are you praying for your group? Are you praying for the success of your group? Are you praying that God will send new people to your life group? And these 3 words will help you, I hope, as a life group leader. Express enthusiasm and encouragement. When people walk in the door, no matter how many show up that night, express enthusiasm and encouragement to the members of your group. Be that catalyst of excitement about life group. So multiply your group, grow your group, and I hope you have a wonderful year with your life groups. If I can help in any way, just let me know. Thank you for watching.